Could you tell us a little bit about the process of creating a mandala?
Well, it takes about 18 months, and I have the students begin by doing centering mandalas, which are small, take about 15, 20 minutes, just to get them into the whole idea of working with material that is subjective. And get them used to the whole idea that the colors that they work with, the shapes that they make, have meaning. And then I basically have them follow a journey, which is based on the Tibetan Buddhist structure of mandalas. Now, mandalas are found all over the world and in every culture, but the most highly evolved in terms of process are those that come from Tibet, Tibetan Buddhism. And I learned this process from a woman in Victoria, British Columbia, who learned it from an artist in Victoria, who learned it from an artist in China. So, in in all kinds of work that have to do with spirituality, the lineage is important, and I don't make a big point of this with my students, but it's important to me to know where all of this came from. And so then once we've established a working relationship with artistic materials and subjective content, then I get them to reflect on where they are in their spiritual journey. And with that as the base, we begin by having them work specifically with colors and learn to apply the gouache medium, because gouache is a paint substance that's used in Oriental art, and we use it on paper, although the Tibetan Buddhists usually apply it to fabric. And so there's a stage of just learning to work with the material. And once I feel that the students have gotten on top of these foundational principles and have some idea of the meditational quality of the work that we're going to be doing, then we begin on the mandala itself. And here we follow the structure of the mandala. So we start with the ring of fire, and when you see a finished mandala, you don't see the minute step-by-step progression that it took to make it. But we start with simply making marks all the way around the perimeter of the circle, and adding color, and then adding more marks, more form, more structure. So it can take several weeks before the ring of fire is complete. And then when it's complete, there's a reflection process on what it is that is being burned away in your life. We move from the ring of fire then to a transition ring before getting into the major work of the mandala, which is in the narrative ring. Now, maybe I should point out that all of the while that a student is working on their mandala, they're at the same time keeping a journal of the process of what's going on externally and internally. And we're meeting on a biweekly or tri-weekly basis as a group of students working on mandalas and sharing our process. In the first few sessions, a lot of the time is focused on just learning the basics. But once the students have finished the Ring of Fire, they really have all of the basics down. And so then the sessions that we continue to have are more about process, sharing the inner work that's taking place. And as I said, the major inner work takes place in the narrative ring. Generally speaking, I have my students begin with a dream mandala, and I have them, while they're painting the Ring of Fire, incubate a series of dreams which they record in their journal and which we discuss as a group. And this is to help them begin to understand what the symbols are pointing to. And out of that process, they put down the series of dreams in the narrative circle. And I like to have them, we do a little process of determining how many dreams they're going to put in their narrative cycle. And this is based on what year this is in their life. And by that I mean based on the process of tarot, where we determine, whether this is the year of 4 or the year of 5 or 6. When I have students whose number for the year is 12, then I give them the choice of whether they're going to paint 12 different scenes, 12 different dreams, or whether they're going to paint 4 dreams that might combine more than one. And I've had students do it both ways. But that whole period when we're working on the dreams is really a time when people are going through a transformation. Whenever you work with unconscious material, all kinds of things are released and processed. When the narrative ring is finished, we move on to do a Sea of Life as a transition into the center of the mandala. In order to get into the center of the mandala, which is understood to be the self, an image of the soul, one has to go through 4 different thresholds. These thresholds are generally on the perimeter of a square, and this square with its 4 thresholds represents a palace or a temple, or in Eastern culture it would be a stupa. And at each one of these thresholds or gateways, there is a guard who could be either an ogre or a guide. Sometimes they're both. And this is generally another important stage in the journey as students begin to recognize who and what either blocks or encourages their development. And once the 4 thresholds have been painted, we move on to the inner garden inside the wall of the square. And here I have them use a very intuitive process. Um, I call it the splash and find method, where they simply splash the paint on the paper and wait until they see something, and then develop those images. And I find that it's especially important at the center to approach it intuitively rather than rationally. And then when the center has been completed, we do the final external rim, which then closes the process. The beginning of the journey with the ring of fire, we establish a kind of psychic protection through the use of fire imagery, and then it's a signal to the psyche that we're going to go inward. So then when the process has been completed, it's important to do that final external rim and signify the closure on the journey, and then to frame it and use it as a symbol for meditation.
What other types of mandalas besides dream mandalas would you teach people to do?
Well, I've had classes do, and I have done myself, a heroine's journey mandala, and at some point, I would like to undertake something that I call a peace mandala, which I haven't laid it all out yet, but it's something that at some point I would like to do. But I like to start with the dream mandala because it does initiate people into working with the unconscious. And then when we go on to do the heroine's journey mandala, we're working at a different level. And when we do the centering mandalas, which take only about 15 or 20 minutes, we come from several different angles. We use a spiral process. We use a simplified version of the Tibetan Buddhist form that I talked about. We do mask, some mandalas that are mask, and we look at our relationships, and I have known other people who have done mandalas that are entirely intuitive, based on no particular structure. But from my own work in personal growth, I have found that it's useful to have a structure and to take a journey as opposed to just do whatever comes to you.
The creation of mandalas. This has been a very enlightening 3 years, working with LiDona and these wonderful women. I took the class because I wanted to get in touch with my artist self. I had no idea what I was getting myself into or how far it would take me. I had no idea how therapeutic working in a group could be. I have learned things that have changed my life and view of the world and broadened my effectiveness as a therapist with my own clients. I have learned to let the images in my soul flow through the paintbrush and onto paper. I have learned to trust the process of listening to, not arguing with, my unconscious when what it was saying doesn't make sense in the real world. I've learned to have conversations with a color or an image. I've learned not to compare my art to the art of someone else and to shut off the mother voice that demands perfect or nothing at all. It is perfect, perfectly me, still a work in progress. There has been a very real, very deep healing that has taken place in the birth of both my mandalas that has extended beyond myself to my family. This is a mysterious and wonderful process.